Welcome to Solar for Homeowners. This is a webinar hosted by Go Green Wilmette, Go Green Highland Park, Go Green Glen, Ellyn, and Go Green Northbrook. These are community-based environmental groups that have started in suburbs of Chicago. Tonight my name is Beth Drucker. I'm with Go Green Wilmette, and I'd like to introduce, we have Sarah Sanford. Give a wave. Sarah is the head of Go Green Northbrook. Jacqueline Casaza, who recently started Go Green Glen, Ellyn. Jacqueline, could you give us a wave? And we have Jay Futterman, who is the head of Go Green Highland Park. And all of us have many other people in our groups that are part of it, but we're here tonight representing those groups. We have people from 25 different communities registered for this webinar, which is really, really exciting. And I know that some of those communities have community-based environmental advocacy groups, but many of them don't. If you live in a community without a group, we hope you'll think about starting one in your community. You can go to gogreenillinois.org and hear how the rest of us are doing it. We'd love to join you to welcome you to that group. So we are going to start this webinar. We're going to learn lots about the solar industry, and we're very, very pleased to have with us as our speaker, Jay Futterman. Jay can give a wave. Jay is a solar ambassador with the Illinois Solar Energy Association, and he is a huge advocate of solar and very, very knowledgeable. So we're really thrilled to have him as our speaker. And be ready to learn, be ready to get inspired. And again, if you're not personally in the market for solar panels, please think about someone that you could share this webinar with. It will be posted to the Go Green Wilmette YouTube channel starting tomorrow. And so with that, Jay, I'd love to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Beth. Thank you to all the Go Green groups. It's a pleasure to be with everyone tonight. And thanks for tuning in to hopefully hear and learn about something that's very important to me, and I think very interesting topic. So I'm just going to start off just by showing you my bill for electricity from August. Hopefully you could see that. August of last year, when the air conditioners are running, I paid nothing to ComEd that month, and it's because I get energy from the sun, from the rooftop of my house. So I'm going to dive right into the presentation here. And there we go. So as Beth mentioned, I'm a solar ambassador with the Illinois Solar Education Association. I've been working with that group since 2016 when we first got our solar panels on our house. And that was shortly after I went to a ISEA presentation at our local library. Much like the one I'm about to give to you all today. You can go to illinoissolar.org and find out more about ISEA. We're actually made up now of two sister organizations. One is the Education Association, which is made up of individual members, and we do talks like this, a lot of outreach, education. We've started working with different municipalities to advocate for solar. And then there's the Illinois Solar Energy Association, which is made up of business members. And so they advocate for solar on the state level primarily, and also does stuff with job fairs and networking and that sort of thing. So I'm just going to start off with the take-home messages. All right. So my overall goal with this, and a lot of what I do, is to keep this planet a nice place to live. And I was very happy to see that so many of us here tonight are concerned about climate as the motivating factor for solar. And really changing how you get your energy is one of the easiest and most impactful things you can do to counter climate change. We hear a lot about climate anxiety. We all experience this, I think, and solar is really an antidote to that. It feels great. If you have solar panels every day, you can check your app and see how much energy that you've grown on your rooftop. There's a definite clustering effect, where one solar installation goes in, neighbors around say, hey, my neighbor's got this. It looks like it makes a lot of sense. Neighbors will follow. You can be a leader in your community. And solar is the cheapest way to power your home in Illinois, the cheapest way. And it's available to everybody, whether you're a renter, whether you have a shady roof, whether you live in a condo, It's available to all of us, whether it's on your roof or through community solar. We'll talk about that in a bit. And really, not going solar means you're actively choosing to pay more for your electricity and support the dirty energy that is tipping our climate into crisis. So, 2021 was one of the hottest years in recorded history. And in the United States, we had 20 separate billion-dollar plus weather and climate disasters. Similar totals over the last 4 years. Now, between 1980 and 2000, inflation adjusted, we were averaging about 4 per year. So the climate has changed. Climate change is here. It's extremely costly, and unfortunately, it's going to get worse. So I always tend to start with the gloomy stuff and then move to the more optimistic. So where are we in Illinois? What's our energy mix look like? Well, about half of our energy in Illinois is from nuclear. That's the big blue section here. About a quarter of our energy is still from coal. Fortunately, this is decreasing rapidly. The gray represents natural gas, which is increasing somewhat. The yellow is wind, and this tiny little blue wedge here is solar. So really, that's only 1% of the energy mix on the grid as of last year. But that's a little misleading because that doesn't take into account the energy that's produced and goes directly into houses, but not on the grid. So truly, there's a lot more solar than that. But very exciting, there's a state law that was passed in September last year, the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, which requires 40% of the electricity used in the state to come from renewables by 2030. So that is really setting the stage for exponential growth in solar. And for that to be successful, it's going to rely upon all of us to take advantage of this program. So you can see just over the last 3 years, we've really had an exponential surge in solar, and that's only going to continue as time goes by. So I mentioned the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act passed last year. What this really does is it gets us on a path to 100% clean energy by 2050. It closes down all the coal plants, except for the municipal ones, which are allowed to go through 2045 and then close. And it significantly increases the funding for renewable energy. It also has a lot of funding for what's called Illinois Solar for All and environmental justice programs, which basically enables low-income people who've been adversely affected by fossil fuel industry to take advantage of the job opportunities and the lower energy costs that solar can provide. So again, I mentioned solar for all in environmental justice communities. A lot of the force of CEJA is going towards equity, which is very exciting to see. And what this is all setting the stage for is a changing of our electric grid, right? Historically, we've had large power plants under centralized control, but we're moving to a more distributed energy generation system. And this has a lot of engineering challenges, but a lot of engineering opportunities, huge amounts of job growth opportunities, and ultimately it's going to bring us a more stable, cheaper, and cleaner way of powering our lives. So why are we going solar? Why do people go solar? We had a lot of responses from everybody, and my reasoning, along with many of yours, reduces carbon emissions and environmental concerns. It improves public health. As Beth mentioned, burning coal is bad for the air. There's asthma clusters all around coal plants. Coal ash is a huge problem. There's coal ash piles in Waukegan, really close to the shore of Lake Michigan, where we get all of our water from. With solar, we don't have that issue. Solar energy creates lots of jobs. There's more jobs in renewable energy now than there are in coal. It will save money on the electric bill. I showed you my bill. Solar in Illinois is the cheapest way to get electricity. It increases home values. There's been studies that have looked at this, and really given the choice between two identical homes, one where you have to pay an electric bill, the other where you don't, people will tend to choose the one that has lower cost of energy. And solar really is an inexhaustible energy supply. So, as we're living in a world now where, gas prices are going up, There's all sorts of trouble in Europe now, natural gas shortages and that sort of thing. It's good to know that if you make your own electricity, you're largely separated from all of that stuff. But there's some things that are still holding people back, certainly. We identified upfront cost and a general lack of knowledge as some barriers, and I'll do my best to overcome those for you all. But a lot of people in the solar industry will say there's just a lot of inertia. People, they just habitually, they pay their electric bill every month. They don't really think about where the energy comes from. So just getting people to kind of realize, well, you have a choice where you get your energy from. You have a choice if you want to pay more or pay less. And you have a choice for what your energy is going to do to the planet. And that can really get people motivated. But other myths that persist are you have to have a southern exposure on your roof. Well, south is the best in our area. On our house, we have east and west, and it works just fine. Concerns about solar panels causing problems with the roof. There's thousands and thousands of installations out there. And as long as you have a reputable contractor, it's not going to happen. There's really hasn't been issues with that. There's state statutes that say it can't increase property taxes. We talked about resale on the house. We'll talk more about cost. What about weather? It's cold in Illinois. Well, solar actually works better in cold weather. And they're built to withstand the snow, the hail, the wind, the sleet. In areas that have hurricanes, that have solar, the solar panels survive. It's the transmission lines that tend to go down. What about sun? We don't get enough sun here. Well, we get plenty of sun, not as good as Arizona or California, but Illinois gets about as much sun as Spain does. And early on in the solar years, Germany was actually one of the world's leaders in solar deployment, and Germany gets about as much sun as Alaska does. So if it is kind of working there, it'll work really well in Illinois. And the proof is in the payout. So let's just talk about briefly how the solar system works on your house. So you got the sun, it shines down on your photovoltaic array, and that causes electrons to spin around and creates what we call DC or direct current power. So the direct current power gets converted to alternating current or AC power, either on an inverter on the back of the panel or one that's positioned outside the house or in the basement. From there, the energy flows into your service panel and then into your house where it powers everything that you use. Excess energy goes out onto the grid through your electric meter, and it's metered. Now, this doesn't change the way you experience the use of electricity one bit. Whether the sun is shining or not, the lights go on and off the same way. If you're making excess energy, which oftentimes you do during the day, when it feeds out into the grid, it winds up flowing into your neighbors' houses. And the utility keeps track of how much energy goes each way through a process called net metering. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes. So the first steps when going solar, now that we hopefully have some good motivation to go solar, think about where you're going to put these panels, right? So they're going to go on the roof if you're going to do homeowner solar. Think about how much life is left in the roof. If your roof is going to need replacement in the next few years, you'll probably want to do the roof first. Think about your exposure. Southern exposure is best. East and west work well. If there's a tree in the way, please don't cut down the tree. Think about how much time you're going to be in the house. If you're planning to move within just a few years, it's probably not the best investment. Take some time to really understand your energy consumption and do everything you can to optimize efficiency, because the cheapest solar panel is the one that you don't have to put up. So there's a lot that you could do with efficiency. And I always say, this is the first thing. ComEd will do a free home energy assessment. They'll come through and change your light bulbs, do some other basic stuff. You can have a more exhaustive professional energy audit come that will look at things like building envelope, really do a comprehensive assessment of where you can invest and save money in energy. But simple stuff. We should not have any incandescent bulbs. CFL or LED bulbs are even better. Look for any envelope leaks in the house, caulking, insulation, Look for leaky doors and windows, Energy Star appliances, simple things just like turning lights and TVs off when you leave the room, and having a programmable thermostat will all save energy. Also, think about your next car. The lovely blue car up here is my Chevy Bolt, all electric, and it's a fantastic machine. But if you're charging that energy from the grid, it's really a nuclear and coal-powered car, which is kind of a sidestep. But if you power the car with solar energy, that's really great because that increases the payback on your solar panels and you're driving on sunshine. And when you're going to factor in how big of a system that you want to get, you want to factor in how much energy use you're going to be using. And a car will use quite a bit more than just a regular house without a car. The Illinois Solar Energy Association website, illinoissolar.org, has a lot of great resources. We have a solar calculator there. We have a Find a Professional tool, which should be the next step for everybody. You put in your area in which you live, and it'll have a list of solar contractors and installers that operate in your area. We recommend having at least 3 come by to give their assessment of your project. I think when comparing them, a good idea is to ask for references. That's what I did. It helped me figure out the company that I wanted to go with. And there's also a lot of educational resources on the Illinois Solar Energy Association website as well. So check that out. So you've determined which contractors are going to come by to take a look at your roof. They'll assess the life of the roof. They'll look at structural things, make sure there's enough support. They'll look at your service panel to see if that needs any work. But you'll choose a contractor. They'll help walk you through what's called an interconnection agreement with ComEd. They'll walk you through the permit process. The panels get delivered and then they get put up on the roof, usually in a day or 2. But the whole process figure may take about 3 to 4 months to go solar. All right, so I touched on net metering a little earlier, and this is one of the tools that we have that really lowers the upfront cost. There's net metering, there's state incentives and federal incentives. And with those things together, the cost of solar becomes quite affordable. So how does net metering work? Well, like I mentioned before, solar energy is made on the rooftop. The energy goes to your home, excess goes back to the grid, and the surplus energy is monitored and credited to your utility account. There's a variation throughout the year and even throughout the day with how much energy you're going to make. In the colder, darker months, we don't make a lot of electricity. In the warmer, sunnier months, we make a lot more. And with our usage, peak summer, we use a lot of electricity for air conditioning. In spring and fall, we use less. And in the winter time, we have the lights on, so there's more. Or if you have an electric car, the cars get less efficient in the cold weather, so you tend to use more electricity in the winter. But with net metering, the goal is to have those times when you're overproducing balance out the times when you're underproducing. So over the course of the year, you've essentially made all the electricity you use, even though it's not at the exact same time. And because we have net metering, we don't really need to worry about battery or storage for household use. Now, batteries are great if you're concerned about the power going out, but in Illinois, our net metering program is really great. So the grid, in essence, is your battery. And when you have your bill, you'll have a line item which shows kilowatt hours from the grid. This is how much electricity is flowing from the grid into the house, and kilowatt hours to the grid. This is the excess that you're producing and putting back on the grid. And if you are producing more than you are using, you'll get a rollover of excess generation. And this carries over from month to month, but resets once a year. Now, you still, depending on the way that you do your billing, may have about a $15 to $20 bill per month to stay connected to the grid. There are ways of changing the way in which this is billed with something called hourly pricing, where you can get rid of that $15 fee altogether. That's how I was able to get a $0 electric bill in August. It's a little more complicated. I don't want to get too far into the weeds with that right now. So that was net metering. That's how that works. And then I mentioned there's federal and state incentives. The federal incentive is a great one. This is a tax credit. It used to be 30%, but now it's stepping down. In 2022, it's 26%. In 2023, it goes down to 22%. Now, who knows, there may be some action that takes place at the federal level, but basically this tax credit means you get back 26% of the cost of the installed system as a credit on your taxes. So if your installed solar costs $20,000, you're going to get $5,200 back from the government, assuming you have tax liability. So that takes a big chunk out of the upfront cost for solar. And then there's the state incentives. And this is through something called a REC, or Renewable Energy Certificate. This is basically a way of monetizing the environmental benefits of solar generation. And a REC represents 1 megawatt hour of solar energy produced. And you'll get paid for the energy you produced through RECs. And that will come out to about 20 to 30% of the cost of the solar installation. So with these two credits, you're going to save over half of the installed cost. Again, the RECs, just to review, you install the solar produces energy. We know how much energy it's going to produce. And the Illinois Power Agency basically pays for the RECs, pays you for the RECs, because the goal of the state at this point is to increase the renewable energy on the grid. And this is the powerful way that they have to do that. And now what they do basically is pay you upfront for 15 years of production. So right off the top, you get a big chunk of that upfront cost taken down. So let's talk some specifics. All right, we'll talk about my installation. So we got our solar first in April of 2016. At that time, we were using an average of 400 kilowatt hours of electricity per month. We were pretty efficient back then. We calculated that 16 panels would cover our yearly use. The panels that we got were 285 watts a piece. They have panels now that are over 400 watts. Our upfront cost at that time was $14,700. Now we got 30% off of that as a tax credit, which knocked the cost down to $10,300. And then we got $4,250 back as renewable energy credits, which were spread over 5 years back then, for a net cost of $6,000. And that $6,000 is going to cover our energy use for the next 25 to 30 years. So essentially, $200 a year for clean fossil fuel free energy. That's worth it to me. And then in 2018, I got an electric car, started buying electricity from the grid again, wasn't happy about that. So we decided to put up some solar panels on the west side of our roof. At this point, the panels had got more efficient. So 360 watt panels were available. Took 9 of these to cover what I calculated my yearly fuel cost for the car. Again, about $14,000, less 30% tax credit, less $3,300 for RECs, which are paid up front, gave me a net cost of $6,500. That's essentially going to cover my gas for the next 30 years. Again, I think that's a great value, fossil fuel free transportation. And this is kind of what the installation process looks like. There's the roof folks up there. They're installing what's called a racking system. This is attached directly to the roof rafters and flashed all around. No issues with leaks. I've been up in my attic many times. Then they send the panels up on what they call a sled. Panels are very lightweight, about 2.5 by 5 feet in size. They just get clicked right into the racking system. This is our initial system on the east side. This is the one that I got to power the car on the west side. The electricity flows from the panels on the roof into this inverter, which is located on the side of the house, and from there into the service panel in our basement. So how's it working out? Well, we have different apps for each of our systems. In retrospect, it would have been better to maybe get it all at once, but I didn't have a car at that time. There's a definite seasonal variation with our electricity production. Sunny months, you're going to make a lot more. In the winter, if there's snow on the panels, they're not going to make anything. But that's all kind of factored in. We know, based on where we are in the world, which way the roof is facing, the slant of the roof, how much sun the panels are going to make in a given year. And like I said, because we're still connected to the grid, if the panels aren't making energy, the lights still go on, no problem. And ideally, we've made enough excess energy during the sunny months so that we don't have to pay any bills during the snowy months. So there's still a big upfront cost for that, right? Even though you get a lot of that back within a year, 14,000 or a bigger installation can easily be $20,000. So upfront cost is a barrier for sure. Now there's different ways of doing this. Now you can own the system or you can lease the system. If you own the system, long-term, it'll be a better financial return than if you're leasing or doing what's called a power purchase agreement. If you're going to own the system, you could pay cash outright. You can get a traditional loan from bank or home equity loan, or you can get a solar system loan. ISEA has partnered with the Clean Energy Credit Union, which is a credit union that focuses exclusively on providing loans for clean energy and energy saving projects. And they have a couple different options. They have a short-term loan, which kind of covers you up until you get that tax credit and the rec credits, which knock down about 60% of the upfront cost. And then there's longer-term loans as well. But that may not be for everybody. So there's options where you don't actually own the array, where it's owned by a third party, a solar lease or power purchase agreement. With this arrangement, there's little or no upfront cost. You have to make sure you understand the contract. Things to ask are, what if I sell my house? What if the roof needs replacing? Will my lease payments have to go up over time? Important to understand this. And you're not going to come out saving as much in the end as if you bought it yourself. But in many ways, it's a lot easier. And essentially, you're agreeing to pay the owner, the solar company that put the panels on your roof, an agreed upon price for electricity that's lower than what you're getting from ComEd. So you're still going to be saving substantial money versus buying your electricity from the grid. And you know that it's solar up on the roof, so it's clean. It's great, but still it's not for everybody. If you have a shady roof, if you're a renter, if you live in a condo, what are your options then? Well, then there's community solar. And, if you're a member of Go Green, Highland Park, or Wilmette, you've certainly heard of community solar over the last couple of years. Essentially, this refers to large-scale solar fields, acres and acres of solar panels that are being put up, usually in rural Illinois, within ComEd's territory. And you could subscribe to these projects. You can find out more about this at illinoissolar.org, illinoisshines.com, or through Citizens Utility Board. In essence, what you're doing is saying, I'll purchase the electricity from 6 panels, 8 panels, 20 panels, whatever it needs to power your house. And you're not actually getting those electrons, but you're basically paying to put that energy on the grid, and we all share the same grid. Now, these fields, like I said, they're typically in rural Illinois. They don't have to be anywhere near you are, as long as they're within the ComEd service area. So it's great for renters, shady homes, people who live in condos. It's a perfect opportunity. And you basically are going to be buying electricity from these solar farms for less than what you get it from the utilities. So they'll typically give you 10 to 20% off of the supply rate. Again, it doesn't influence the way that you experience the use of electricity. You're just going to be paying less in order to put more solar on our energy grid. This is a little different than, well, it's a lot different from some other stuff out there. I know we personally get a lot of mailings for third-party energy providers that offer renewable energy credits and say they're green power. Those are okay, but those are almost always going to be more expensive than the electricity from the utility. And they're typically going to subsidize wind or solar, not in Illinois. And I think it's really important that we work to keep these green energy jobs in Illinois, to clean up our grid, to get coal off of our land. So just pay attention if you get any direct marketing. You want to see that this is Illinois-based community solar rather than just REC-supported green energy. And the billing, I don't want to get too into the weeds again on this, but let's say you use 1,000 kilowatt hours of electricity in a month, and your portion of the community solar, produces 950 kilowatt hours that month. On your ComEd bill, you'll see a credit for 950 kilowatt hours, and you'll have to pay ComEd for 50 kilowatt hours only. You get a separate bill from your community solar provider for that 950, and the price you're paying for that 950 is generally going to be 20% less than what you would be paying ComEd for that same amount of energy. So again, it's a way of getting solar if you can't put it on your roof, and it's guaranteed to be less than what you're paying now from the utility. So that's kind of how solar works. So the next steps here, I encourage you to check out illinoissolar.org, find a professional tab on there, and invite some solar installers to take a look at your house if you have a house that's suitable. If you want to learn more about being an ISEA member, check that out. Happy to talk more, but we've got some other people here with us today. A quick summary: solar technology is here. It will save you money. It is a key way to counter climate change. Let your elected leaders know you support solar energy. Now is really the time. I know a lot of you are here, half of you are here, and you said that you're just generally interested in solar. It's time to get off the fence, take that next step. Let's be part of the solution, okay? More resources there, like I said. And now we have some people with us who live in the area who have solar as well. And so we want to take a few minutes to have them on and share their story. So I'm going to stop my share here so Jacqueline can come on. All right. Stop share. There we go.
Hi, Jay. That was awesome. I'm really excited about solar now, although I don't have it at my home in Glen, Ellyn. But I have one of my neighbors, Billy Joe Mills, on from Glen, Ellyn, and he's got solar panels, so he can tell us a little bit about his experience. So Billy, I know we chatted a little bit about it, but what was your motivation to choose solar for your home?
Hey, what's up, Jack? Yeah, thanks for having this conversation, and hello to everybody. Motivation was, there's a moral motivation in part for me. Okay, there's the planet, right? The planet thinks in terms of millions and billions of years. We think in terms of minutes and years, or minutes, days, and years. The planet's going to be fine over millions and billions of years. It's a question of, do we want to live in a beautiful planet or not? And if we want to live in a beautiful planet, I think we all need to do our small part to sort of counteract our carbon usage. So I wanted to, I've got 2 little kids. I wanted to be able to look at them and say, hey, we're generating most of the energy that we're using from our house. Our house isn't just sitting there idly, it's actually generating power. And isn't that super cool? And I think it is. Yeah.
Awesome. How did you go about choosing an installer? I know somebody mentioned that was one of the really confusing areas to get started.
Right. Okay. Awesome. The installer. Okay. I did a lot of research on the installer. I did think that I got hung up on the installer. Okay. Yes, there are. I think that there probably are some bad installers out there. However, there are, if you do even a decent amount of due diligence, you will find the credible ones. And most of them, I think, are credible, good installers. I ended up going with GRNE. I arrived at them after doing a lot of research. And then I went at the Glen Ellyn Library, the Citizens Utility Board did a presentation with GRNE, and so they kind of, it was a little bit of an endorsement for GRNE. So the alignment of those two things you know, it just sort of clicked for me, and it basically reassured me that my research process was on the right path, and I went forward right away from there.
That's good. Yeah, it sounds like after listening to you and what Jay said, that Citizens Utility Board and the Illinois or ICA are good resources for people to find out about the installer.
Yeah.
And what were some of the lessons that you learned, or maybe what's some advice you might have for people who are contemplating this process?
Well, Jay's presentation was awesome. I mean, he mentioned about the sort of $15, $16 a month about the supply charge. I mean, that's one thing to be aware of. I do still pay that sort of, even in like July, August, et cetera, I still am paying this supply charge. I think you should expect to pay that, even if you're offsetting 100% of your usage, you should expect to pay something like that which is for the benefit of being hooked up to the grid. You could, of course, go totally off grid, which is like hardcore and awesome, but but batteries are expensive. And so that kind of, you know, if you want to be, you know, that's like a different conversation. But yeah, I mean, I think that, and also just once the system is set up, doing everything you can on your end through your inverter. I've got a solar edge inverter to just monitor the system, just make sure right at the initial onset that everything is hooked up correctly, that you're generating the power that you're expecting to be generating. Because really, once it's hooked up properly, you're going to be able, from what I've experienced so far in the last few years, and then from what I've read about, you're going to be able to ignore what's on your roof for the next 20, 30 years. But just make sure it's hooked up correctly at first, and that it's producing what it's supposed to be producing, and that your installer did their job.
Good tip. Okay, last question. What's your favorite part about having solar panels on your house?
Well,
so many choices.
No, like I said, I love being able to look at my kids, and it's in our backyard on our south. We have a back roof that's south facing. I love being able to look. I've got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. The 3-year-old sort of gets it, and I like show her, like, I'm like, look up, like we're generating power, and what I love the most is just the feeling that is what I'm doing. You know, like the sun powers nearly all life on Earth, or arguably all life on Earth. Outside of maybe deep sea ocean, like super weird creatures, but even they're feeding on like whatever particles that are dropping down. But anyway, why shouldn't we also be powering our lives on the energy from the sun, right? It makes sense philosophically to me in terms of the way that the Earth is set up to work and the way that life on this planet works. We should be collaborating with the sun rather than ignoring it or treating it as though it is not an incredible source of energy for our solar system.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Billy Joe. Really appreciate you sharing
Thank
with
you.
everyone.
All right.
Thanks
Okay,
for the
back to you.
questions.
Great. Thank you so much. And now I want to introduce Amy Downey. Amy is a Go Green Wilmette board member, and she's also a board member of Illinois Solar Energy Association and in the solar energy industry herself. And she's going to be telling us about a solar installation that is in Wilmette. And I'm going to put up some slides for you, Amy, here, and you can.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Jay. And wonderful slideshow that you had. Yes, I'm going to introduce Bill's home. He couldn't be with us today. So this is his beautiful house in Wilmette. You can see he has a dozen panels up here on the second story. And then also, if you see at the back lower corner, there's 4 panels on the garage. So garages are a great place to put solar. If it's a detached garage, you can trench. And if it's attached garage, then sometimes you don't need the 3-foot setback. It just depends. So Bill learned about solar in 2019 when he attended a Go Green Wilmette annual fair that we hosted called Going Green Matters. And I'm going to quote a little bit of what Bill's story is. And before I do that, I want to add that his system size is a 7.75 kilowatt, which is an average size system in the Chicagoland area. He has 25 panels, so he actually has more panels on the other side of the house. They are 310 watts each. And as Jay mentioned, panels are typically above 360 now. Between 360 and 400 is common for residential panels. That means that you can fit in fewer number of panels, you can get a higher wattage system. Okay, so Bill, I'm going to quote for Bill. So he said, I spoke with system owners and vendors. The owners gave me a lot of useful tips. The vendors ranged from pessimistic, saying your site isn't a good candidate, to straightforward, let's do a detailed analysis. Only one company actually looked at the possibility of using the garage as well as the house and came up with a very practical system. The install company walked through the details and all the choices were easy to make. We went with a large but conservative system. The components are warranted for 25 years, which is the case for all solar panels. We did not include a storage battery at that time. For him, Bill's total cost for the solar was $23,000. The federal tax credit and the Illinois SRECs covered 2/3 of the cost in 2019. That's when the incentive rates were even higher than they are now. And so they paid $8,000 out of pocket. He says currently we are saving about $80 per month on the ComEd budget plan, or $960 annually. And his system is offsetting 35% of his home's electric power. So, and he's still saving, $960 annually. That makes the payback period about 8 years. He said, please note we are on the residential real-time pricing program with ComEd. He does have an EV and a PHEV. And they set it to recharge only when the prices are lowest overnight. And I want to add these nice quotes. He says, if your site is right, go solar. He said he wants to give us a tip. Before you start, make sure you think through how to use your energy. And that again is what Jay said, is like, try to go more energy efficient at home, lower your energy usage before going solar. Your choices will differ if you use electric power for heating. Like if your air conditioning is your largest factor, understand that when your solar is producing in the summertime and you're using that air conditioner is going to pull directly from the solar. So you're not pulling grid energy, which is a really great combination. So thank you so much for that. And this is the fun part. Is the Solar Edge is a type of inverter, and this is the Solar Edge app, and it shows you his current power production, his lifetime energy, which is really exciting. That the 14.39 MWH in green there is megawatt hours, and megawatts is much versus kilowatt hours. So his system has made very much off-grid energy for 2 years. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here.
All right. Great. Thank you so much. And we have one other guest. I want to bring on Brian Grisco. Brian's a friend of mine. He lives out in Round Lake. And he has a solar system on his house, and he actually has it via a solar lease or power purchase agreement. So he came at this in a little different way than I did or our other two guests did. So Brian, are you there? Can you tell us about your system, and if you need me to advance, just tell me to next slide, and I'll do that for you.
Okay. We went solar about a year and a half ago at this point. It's August of 2020 is when we connected. We went with a lease on our end. Just made more sense for us at the time. Going solar for us, it truly meant, hey, let's save the environment. Let's save some money in the time. Okay, we're going to use that sun. We have a nice big south-facing roof right there. Our system is 21 panels, and oh geez, what is it? Almost 7 kilowatts for the whole system. And when they were installing it, they actually told us we have plenty of room that they could install 3-4 more panels and still be good. Which we're looking into now too. Let's see what else here. Thanks. The ComEd aspect that you keep hearing is, yes, you're going to keep paying. As you see, this is part of our bill from probably a summer, late summer. So we're sending the 629 kilowatts to the grid. We're taking in 636. So we paid for 7 kilowatts. Getting all that credit back. Okay, we end up paying nothing, which is pretty cool. Our system, like I said, we leased it. I looked into a few different companies, looked into buying outright, looked into leasing. I actually looked into Sunrun before in like early 2019. And they were actually at that point, like, yeah, we're gonna charge you this much money. I'm like, you're not even coming close to being under anything for money wise. So it kind of didn't make sense for us. We waited. We actually had a friend who was a solar broker. And so we reached out with her and she just kind of helped break everything down. And she's like, I'm gonna run your roof, run it through how many ever companies that they had at the time. And they actually ended up being Sunrun again. And they found it to be, they'll get us 100% of our power done with these panels. So they gave us the 21 panels, pretty fairly priced at that point. So then here's our install day. This was July of 2020. So go pandemic. Guys came out and there, I don't know, a handful of them just got up on the roof. Okay, they got all the 21 panels right there. Everything's facing south. They run the cord down, and the picture of the inverter and our meter. It's actually on this whole open side right there that you look at. So that's where the inverter is. Very easy, very accessible. With Sunrun, so they have an app that we look at. There's a screenshot of it. It's pretty sweet that they keep track of it too. So they're checking out the system to see if there's anything wrong with the panels. They're keeping an eye on it. At one point, we weren't showing any production for days. So I messaged them and they're like, no, everything's running. It's just not updating on your end. So we'll try and figure that out. The solar was really nice. Okay. We had 0 upfront costs. We pay a monthly fee to them. Unfortunately, because it's a lease and we didn't buy it, we don't get the tax credits at all. So that goes to the company, I believe. And then, yeah, we were locked in for a nice lease rate for our panels for the entire time that we have them. Again, we don't have to do any of the monitoring. I'm worrying about if they're producing or not. If we ever need to have our roof replaced, minimal costs. They're going to take the panels off. They're going to store them, wait for our roof to be done, and then they'll put them back on. And they said that it's actually usually covered if your roof is being done by your insurance. It's usually covered by the insurance too. Let's see. So the app here is really cool. You can see yesterday's production. You can see the last 30 days. You can kind of take a look the last 7 days. So I don't remember what month I sent. Oh, this is June. Okay. So this is less than a year ago. We're already up over 12,000 kilowatts in our production all time.
That's great, Brian. And I know you've also been kind of bitten by the electricity bug and are looking at electric cars now as well, and
Yep.
got space up there for a couple more panels to power them with.
I'm hoping that'll offset some areas of that.
Awesome. All right, thank you. Well, with that, Beth, I'm going to send it back to you. We can open things up for some Q&A and other remarks then.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Jay. That was terrific. I am a solar owner, but there's always more to learn, and your presentations are terrific. The Illinois Solar Energy Association has many solar ambassadors. So we have people here from 25 different communities. If each of you tried to get a solar ambassador to give a program like this in your community, just think about how we could make solar spread. With that, we're going to start the Q&A. And moderating that is going to be Amy Hannah Downey again. She is in the solar industry. She is also a board member of ICEA, as well as a Go Green Wilmette board member. So with that, we're going to take a look at the Q&A and listen along, and we'll figure out which of us is the best person to answer the question, depending on, specifically what it is. So keep adding your questions to the Q&A, and we'll be monitoring it, and hopefully we'll answer all of your questions. It's 8:04. We'll see how many questions there are. But before we start, there's one thing I would like to mention. Every year, the Illinois Solar Energy Association has a solar tour in September, and they put houses on display all over the state of Illinois, a lot of the Chicagoland area. Go Green Wilmette decided last year that we would try to see if we could get a lot of houses right in Wilmette, so people could literally hop on their bike and bicycle from solar installation to solar installation instead of driving between the suburbs. And we were able to get 13 houses on a solar tour. In Northbrook, Sarah Sanford was able to get 6 to 8 solar installations from Northbrook. So I also want to mention to any of you in the 25 communities that you represent, if no one is doing solar in your community, see if you can't think in advance and see whether you couldn't help get a few extra houses on the Illinois Solar Energy Association, so people in your town could learn about solar nearby. So that's my little plug for the Illinois Solar Energy Association Solar Tour, which is now, I think, probably the final weekend in September. So with that, we are going to we're going to have Amy Hannah Downey help with the Q&A. So Amy, why don't you start off?
All right. Hi, everybody. Okay, I'm looking at the Q&A box right now. There's some that we have answered, but I want to touch upon them out loud and see if anyone else wants to add to it. I like this question going direct about how the village permits solar. So Wilmette Village, for instance, the question is, I have a west-facing roof that would be very visible to drivers. Will Wilmette say no to this? The question is, no, they will not say no. They will permit anything. It doesn't matter, where it is located on your roof according to aesthetics. So Wilmette does not, some HOAs, you might have problems with, but municipalities don't typically ever or can't actually control that. Does anyone else want to add to that?
There should be no problem in Northbrook or surrounding communities. Really, it's really just a quick permit process.
Right.
Okay.
I think part of our job is to help change the mindset that solar panels are ugly. What we need is more people saying solar panels are absolutely beautiful because it means clean energy, clean air, and a good future. Jay, how often do you run into people who think I love solar, but I think panels are really ugly and I don't want to put them on my house?
That happens sometimes. Some of the older panels had a lot more the silver chromy look, and the newer ones are kind of more uniform and black. So I think the aesthetics have improved with time. But I don't think people's roofs look all that great half the time anyway. So
Right.
why not put something up there that shows there's smart people that live inside that house?
Right.
Yeah. So the Silfab is a module panel, same thing. That is sleek black. There's none of those lines in it if you're interested. Is there a problem if you have a flat roof? No. Good news is that there are many different types of solar attachments that can have a long lag bolt that go into the rafter. And so there's no issues there. Jay, would you like to add to that at all?
Yeah, flat roofs are great. You see a lot of flat roof installations on more commercial or industrial properties, because those are expansive flat roofs, and a lot of those are just kind of ballasted, even without having to have penetration into the roof. But you're going to get great exposure on a flat roof to the sun.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, and they can be tilted at 10 degrees south, direct south, no matter which direction your house is facing. Okay, so there's a question that says, I'd love to have solar, but I'm not crazy about how rack systems look. What about panels that are integrated into the roof tiles, shingles, more expensive probably, are they as efficient? I actually work with a company that happens to do roofing and solar glass tiles of 2 different types, Tesla and Sunstyle. And so I can speak pretty strongly with these. Yes, it is much more expensive, about 4 times more expensive to have your entire roof glass, but and the panels are slightly less than current panels. They're about a 300 watt, maybe a 320 watt versus like a 360 or 390 watt for the space. And you're still likely not going to try to have on the north panel PV panels that are on the north facing roof. But it's there's like I said, Tesla and Sunstyle are 2 companies that you can look into for that. Anyone else would like to add to that? Who would like to talk about for villages that are less solar friendly, what can we learn from the ones that are? How did people influence the more progressive places like Northbrook?
Sarah, do you want to help us with that one?
You want me to repeat it?
Yeah, no, it's
Sure.
good. So I just mentioned that you would just encourage your village to look into SoulSmart, which is an organization that is connected to the federal government. And so they do a terrific job of helping villages move in the right direction. And Jay Futterman actually mentioned that Highland Park has moved from bronze to silver, and Northbrook moved from silver to gold. So it's a progress that the organization will help your village through, and they really don't have to do that much. So Northbrook has a checklist. They promise that it will be a 3-day turnaround time for permits. So it's quite easy for you and your solar company to get a permit.
Jay, is it true that most of the companies really help the customer through that process with their village?
Oh yeah, they definitely have an incentive to make that process easy. And I think in terms of getting cities that may not be so solar friendly to be more solar friendly, I think making a personal connection with someone in city government goes a long way. And people in city government may not care that much about the environment, but the great thing about solar is even if you don't care about the environment, if you want to lower your energy bills, then there's that appeal. So you got to try and kind of speak the same language as them and say, hey, I want to save money on my electric bills. This is important to me. And just getting people over sort of that, initial unfamiliarity with it, I think can go a long way. Having a personal connection and saying, hey, this is happening all over the place. Let's get into the 21st century mentality here.
I think this question is really important for a lot of people who feel that if they get solar on their house, maybe their roof may not be as big as they thought, and they're not able to offset 100% of their power, but they are able to offset, hey, 50%, hey, bills was 35%. So what encouraging words can we share with Carol and others that are thinking about going solar, but not feeling like it's fully worth it?
Yeah. Well, I think, if the solar system is just really too small, if you just don't have roof space to put up, more than, I don't know, there's probably some lower limit where it just doesn't make financial sense to put up. But even if you're offsetting half of your energy, that's still worth quite a bit in the grand scheme of things. And chances are it's still going to save you money. And there's ways that you can lower your energy costs. I talked about looking at things in your house to actually, lower your energy use, more efficient appliances, looking at building envelopes, energy audits, that sort of thing. And the fact is, we're in the process of eventually getting a second electric car. We're looking forward to replacing our gas furnace with a heat pump. We've replaced our gas water heater with a heat pump. We're trying to electrify as much as we can, and there's not going to be enough space on our roof unless we get 500 watt panels at some point. But any bit that we do is supplanting coal essentially off the grid, and it's really worthwhile doing.
Absolutely. I agree with Jay. If I have a house that's, 2,000 square feet versus my neighbor who has a 4,000 square foot house, and I can offset 100% of mine, but they can only offset 50% of theirs, we're still offsetting the same amount. That's still a lot. Yeah, it's still a lot. Okay, people like to ask questions about, hail damage and also warranties of solar panels. That is covered. So solar panels across the board have 25-year warranties. Some actually have 30-year warranties. Solar panels survive 30 years and are still producing at 85%, to 80% at 30 years, which is amazing. And they are warranted against hail damage. So if there is hail damage, you will either receive a roofer, like if you have hail damage, the roofer can get a claim that will replace not only your solar, detach and reset, and also your roof. And we do that all the time. So I know that it works very well. Would anyone else like to add to that? Okay. Let's see here. Has anyone worked with Costco on a solar installation? Their services seem well vetted. No.
So no one's done that. If you've done that, put it in the chat so people can know. Amy, let me jump in. There was a question earlier about whether or not you could put panels on a cedar roof. I actually do have a cedar roof, and I have panels on my roof. We were fairly early adopters, and after the panels had been on my roof for about a decade, it was time to re-roof. And so we actually pulled the panels down. That took a day or less, and then realized that panels had become so much more efficient that rather than putting the inefficient 10-year-old panels back up, we upgraded and got much more efficient panels. So we then suddenly were making literally double the energy in the same amount of space. And we then donated those panels to Evanston Rebuilding Warehouse. So someone else was able to put the less efficient panels up who wouldn't have been able to afford buying new panels. So you can re-roof a house. You do have to pay to have those panels taken down and put back up, but it's not an insurmountable problem.
And Beth, I'd like to just tag on to something that you said, and we've kind of said a couple times about how panels are getting more efficient as time goes on. And, in 10 years, there's going to be more efficient panels than there are now, probably. But the point is, right now, it still makes a heck of a lot of sense. The iPhone 15 will be undoubtedly better than the iPhone 11 or whatever we're on right now, but it doesn't mean that you should use a landline instead of a cell phone.
Right. Don't wait for it to be perfect, because they're great now, right?
That's
Okay,
right.
Amy, another question?
Okay, here's a good one. What is the Illinois Adjustable Block Program, the ABP? Is it the REX that you mentioned? Jay?
Yes. So the Illinois Adjustable Block Program is run by the Illinois Power Agency, and that is the way in which they kind of assign value to the different RECs. And we'll get a little complicated here. There's generally all these different buckets. There's some buckets that are in the AMREN territory. There's some that are in the ComEd territory. There's buckets that are for small scale distributed, like homeowners. There's buckets that are for community solar. There's buckets that are for large scale distributed. But basically what they do is they assign a value to each of those blocks, and that's what your RECs are worth.
Nice. Question about homeowners insurance. Are there any issues related to that?
Well, I know when we got ours, we talked to our insurance agent and said, let's make sure we get a rider to cover the value of the solar panels. But beyond that, I haven't really had any issues. You have anything else, anyone?
Amy, can I jump in with a question?
Sure.
A lot of people are thinking that they're interested in solar panels, but it might take 3 or 4 years to do that. Jay, do you think it makes sense for someone to sign on for community solar now? And how would that be modified if they do get solar panels in the future?
Sure. Well, community solar, it's a great option, right? So if you're not convinced you're in the right, you're not in your forever house, or you don't know what you're going to be doing in 5 years, community solar is a great way to get in on solar now. You just want to look at the contracts and see if they have a severance fee if you get out of the community solar contract early. Some of them will have, no fees. Some of them will have a few $100s. It's never going to be anything very exorbitant. So yeah, if you're on the fence still, by all means, look into community solar as something you can do right away.
Right. And Jenny put in the chat that a lot of times you won't be able to offset all of your energy use with panels on your roof. So you could say do 50 or 60%, and you can sign up for community solar for that remaining segment. Amy, another question?
All right. Is there a difference in how the panels look when leasing versus purchasing? The answer is pretty much no. The leasing company will choose the panel that they put on your house versus if you purchase it yourself, you may have a choice of a couple of different types of panels. Is that all good there? Let's see here. How does tree cover impact solar generation? Okay. Yeah, so I'm sure a few of us could talk about this. So a really proper installer company will take shading very seriously and take that into consideration when they are designing your system, your layout. So the layout is how the panels will look like an eagle eye view on top of your roof. So without cutting down any trees, we just want to see what the shading, where the shading is, you want to imagine how the sun is moving from east to west. And there are ways to look up, like ComEd has a sun calculator. And Jay, do you want to add to that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a nice Google Project Sunroof is another interesting way where it could you can put in your address and it'll show you kind of how much solar radiance that your roof gets. I wouldn't really trust that for any of the calculations about cost or payback time, but it's kind of a nice way of looking at sun exposure for your roof.
And one thing that we can mention is in our climate, when our deciduous trees drop their leaves in the winter, there is more light that comes through the trees, in the winter time. So, sometimes it might be a little bit, depending on how much is in the shade, it might be right on the edge and it's still acceptable in some ways.
Hey, Amy, why don't you choose
Mhm.
2 more questions, because we're getting close to 8:30 and we will definitely be signing off at 8:30. So let's choose 2 more good questions and then we'll say goodnight to all.
Sounds good. Let's talk about batteries. So basically every inverter company has their own battery at this point. So Solar Edge has their own battery. Enphase has their own battery. Generac is a really, really cool option for batteries, and they have their own solar optimizers and whatnot. Jay, do you know of other? There's so many.
Yeah, Tesla has their Powerwall,
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, your installer can help you with the sizing that you need. Typically you need, at least a dozen panels on your roof to add to some battery backup. And then that battery backup could be like a 9 kilowatt battery backup system that can power your sump pump, your lights, and your refrigerator for, X amount of hours. It's, batteries are typically, you don't want to use them for your AC, things like that. The battery will be used really quickly, but there are, they can range from $10,000 to 20,000, plus. So it really depends. There is a variation, but I know one of our attendees was mentioning that they do have power outages for about 20 hours, 4 times a day, or 4 times a year, excuse me. And those are times that when it could be worth it. So, and actually, I'd like to open up the floor to on any other questions that we think we should.
Or whether the panelists have any other questions that they want to sign in to mention. Sarah, do you have something for us? Nope. Okay, well, with that, I want to thank Amy. Thank you very, very much it's great to have someone doing the Q&A who is as knowledgeable as you are. Jay, thank you. It is always great to see you present a webinar because you do it so well and so clearly. So this webinar will be posted to the Go Green Wilmette YouTube channel tomorrow. And I want to call attention to the fact that there is a wonderful webinar called The ABCs of EVs, also starring Jay Futterman, who actually has a day job. He's a physician. So if you're interested in EV cars or any of the other topics, there are many webinars on the Go Green Wilmette YouTube channel. Many thanks to Go Green Northbrook, Go Green Glen Ellyn, Go Green Highland Park for collaborating. It was really awesome to do this with your other groups. Many, many thanks to Billy Joel and Brian Grisco for joining us as well. Thank you for sharing your solar experience. So with that, remember that solar is catching. If you put it on your house, you will probably inspire someone else to do it as well. So with that, remember that when it comes to climate change, one solution comes up every morning. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. And we appreciate you spending your evening with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks.